The PRRS-1 was an experimental 6446 duplex developed alongside the production T1. Its Wikipedia article claims it was the biggest passenger steam locomotive ever built, and it gained the nickname the Big Engine. Almost as creative as Big Boy. This is the one that people want to see. At least a handful of viewers have asked for an S1, and I actually had some personal interest in building it too, but not enough to get it done until someone decided to commission this build. So here it is. Let's take a moment to appreciate the size of this thing. Here's the T1, already a large engine. Here's the Q2, already an even larger engine. And here is the S1. Including its tender, the S1 is, in fact, longer than a big boy with its tender. The S1 originally had a full streamlined skirting, similar to that on the prototype T1. The S1 eventually lost it, like the production T1s. I ultimately referenced an unskirted model for this build, as I did not think I could implement the skirting without negatively affecting the running characteristics. As such, this was not a particularly tricky build. I mostly replicated the mechanical and structural architecture of my T1, just bigger. The S1 has more streamlining but fewer greebles, though it still has some interesting features along the top of the boiler casing. I used slanted plates for the firebox thanks to the lack of a sufficiently shallow wedge, and I ultimately brick-built the nose thanks to the lack of an appropriately shaped cone. The bars coming off the nose are supposed to suggest the stripes that run down the sides of the boiler. The actual hard part was, of course, the wiring, which was further complicated by the inclusion of the headlight. I had to redesign the section above the battery box more than once in order to accommodate running 4 wires over and around said box. For the drivetrain, I used the same articulation that I used on the T1, but the larger size of the S1 and subsequently wider wheel spacing limit it to R104 curves. Even then, the ends, especially the cab, still overhang quite a bit in turns, but at least the 6-wheeled trucks don't need sliding axles. In general, though, this chassis should run and turn very smoothly. The driving rods interface with the cylinders with the sliding pin technique. Nowadays, I generally prefer this setup over the sliding tile, as I can build more detail into the cylinders themselves. Since the bars need to go between the driving and connecting rods, I shimmed the lift arms with 2x2 round tiles with holes, suggesting the chonky ball bearings in the prototype running gear. Mold King L motors power the first and last driver set with 1-to-1 gearing, but a CV joint connects the second and third driver, joining everything together like in the T1. Also like in the T1, the entire body separates to inspect the chassis, and this feature will become especially useful in a bit. The combination of no reduction and number 13 drivers, that's double XL, hurts the performance a bit. It runs a little slower than the T1 and the Q2, and the low-end torque probably suffers more. I think adding reduction would do the opposite unless I could find a way to implement a very small reduction, like less than 3 to 5. That being said, the chassis actually rolls very smoothly, and in testing it could go extremely fast with no weight and a faster motor. The nearly 1 kilogram locomotive can pull about 170 grams on plastic track and 210 grams on metal track, representing coefficients of friction of 0.17 and 0.21. These are lower than the numbers we got in the tire testing video, but they don't mean that the BBB XXL wheels perform worse than the official L wheels without tires. Rather, the powered wheels probably don't carry the entire weight of the locomotive. Sticking to R104 does have some benefits. For one, I can couple the locomotive and tender very close together. This does make the drawbar very hard to access, and I typically end up removing the body, connecting the drawbar, and then putting the body back. I wouldn't consider this optimal, but I would consider it better than rolling entire cars like with the E5 Shinkansen. Oh yes, there is a tender too. Like the locomotive, the tender is absolutely enormous, basically the same size as some smaller rolling stock. The bogies almost don't have enough room to turn under the skirt. While the S1, T1, and Q2 tenders all seem to share the same general design, the details do differ considerably. I made the deck on the S1 tender red, as it definitely did not look dark red on my reference model. R104 also lets me use rigid 4-axle bogies again, but this time I had to buy more stock wheel sets, and of course the newest ones were the most economical. Anecdotally, they definitely feel worse than the old wheel sets. I don't care what LEGO has said about them. Look how much the new wheels wobble compared to the old wheels. Of course, we haven't done any explicit testing, but I did buy a couple extra pairs for any potential future video. Anyway, I'm glad I got to build this and play with it a bit. I don't think I would build one for myself, but you never know. In a long enough timeline, I'll probably catch all the PRR duplexes and build the Q1 as well, even if nobody commissions it. On that note, this is the end of the video. Please consider subscribing if you like what we do, and have a nice day.